last night on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Thank you, Erica Stanish. Welcome, everybody, to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. And also, Merry Christmas to you. I'm Josh Taylor. Good to talk to you on a Sunday night in for Bob Pompiani, clearly. But want to point something out. I just got word about a minute ago. Santa Claus was tracked over Philadelphia, so he's not too far away. Hopefully your little ones are in bed and you got the cookies out waiting for Santa to arrive. But in the meantime, how about you hang out with me? 412-575-2600 is the number on the Borders and Borders hotline. And of course, you can tweet me at Josh Taylor HD. Plenty of football to discuss. And this is a day that actually works out well for the Steelers. They needed some help besides winning yesterday against Cincinnati. They needed some help in the AFC playoff race. Right now, they are firmly entrenched in that 9th spot. Now, a lot of what happened today doesn't really move them up or down in the standings. However, it opens the door for them within the next couple weeks. Now, bear in mind, they do need to win out. They need to win next week in Seattle, and they need to win in the final week of the season in Baltimore. That does not change. However, they also needed some teams in front of them to lose some games, and they got some help in 3 games already so far today. Tampa Bay beat Jacksonville, Cleveland beat Houston, and Atlanta beat Indianapolis. And they could get help in a 4th game, because right now New England up 23-7 on Denver in Denver. That's another game that could help the Steelers out, and if at very least increase their odds to make the playoffs. So they're getting some of the outside help that they need. But the question now remains, can they do what they need to do for themselves to finish the job and put themselves in potentially at 10-7? That's what we're looking at here, which means we got to figure out what they need to do against Seattle next week and what they need to do in Baltimore the week after, because this is 2 road games. One of them is against an NFC team, which, by the way, had to battle back and beat Tennessee today on the road in Nashville. Sound good from Mike Tomlin as far as the prospect of that and what that could mean. And if this defense doesn't have a Landon Roberts, that could be a problem as far as maybe trying to slow down that Seattle run game. And we've seen them do some pretty creative things in the past couple weeks, even borrowing a couple concepts from that go-go offense, if you ever heard about it before. Shout out to Brendan Marion. If you know, you know. But they're doing some interesting things in Seattle, and it could be a matchup problem in a couple different ways for the Steelers. So that's one thing I'm looking at on that side of it. On the other side of it, you wonder what happens on offense. Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, which one starts at quarterback this upcoming week? That's another thing that sticks out. I know there's a lot of opinions either way. I'm pretty sure I'll hear from you one side or the other coming up here in your phone calls or your tweets. The other thing I look at, and particularly for the Steelers, is their own run game. Can they get their own run game going? The upside of having Mason Rudolph have the performance he had yesterday was that the run game had space to operate as well. And they were doing really well running the football out of those really light boxes, maybe only a tight end in the box, not a lot of extra people in the line of scrimmage, maybe 6, 7 bodies tops. Fewer guys inside the box on defense, opening up space. Plus, the offensive line, I thought, did a really good job opening holes for Najee Harris and also for Jaylen Warren. They were able to run freely. You needed to get the run game back on track as well. You're going to need it going into late December and January. And if you're still alive in January, you need it through that month in the playoffs as well. I've been saying this for years. Running the ball and defense are portable. You can do them anywhere, and you're almost, I won't say you're guaranteed to have success, but you got a better shot in any situation or any kind of weather or setting that you're in. 412-575-2600 is the number on the Borders and Borders hotline. Also, give us a shout on Twitter at Josh Taylor HD. What do you do if you're Mike Tomlin going into this game? Do you start Mason Rudolph? Do you start Kenny Pickett? Talk to me about it. We'll be back here in a few. Welcome back. Time for our GMC Sierra Tweet of the Night. It comes from our friends at NFL and CBS. Most games with 200 receiving yards in the Super Bowl era. Amari Cooper just racked up his 4th today. That ties him with Jerry Rice. Just one behind Megatron himself, Calvin Johnson, with 5. And Amari Cooper's performance today helped out Cleveland. Of course, we talked about this earlier in the show. Helped Cleveland beat Houston, which gives the Steelers a little bit more room to try to leapfrog either Houston or Indianapolis in the AFC standings. Now, granted, both of those teams need to lose as well. Curious to hear your thoughts about the Steelers' chances in the playoffs and what might be the scenario that works best for them. 412-575-2600. We got Kathy and Derry. Kathy, you're on the Nightly Sports Call, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Josh. Thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate you.
Hey, well, this is my story. I'm sticking to it. I think Tomlin should have put Rudolph in there the last how many games, and I think the Steelers would have won. Yesterday's game was fabulous. Last week's game, I stopped watching it because I was so disgusted. But, I'm thinking that, and I don't know if Kenny Pickett's going to be able to play the next 2 games, because if he's not fully recovered, I don't think he should play and hurt his ankle anymore or hurt it worse. So my thing is, I think Rudolph should be in there, and I wish I could tell Tomlin that. You tell him for me.
I can't tell him either. He's not going to listen to me. But your point is valid from the Kenny Pickett side of things. Here's where I stand on it. Because Kenny Pickett was supposed to miss a month, right? The projected date where he could be back was Baltimore, that last game of the season. So if you're bringing him back now, you're bringing him back a week earlier than you projected he would be back. That you need your quarterback to do consistently. Those were the things that Mason Rudolph did. Those are the things you couldn't get the other 2 quarterbacks to do on a consistent basis. So if you're looking at a reason for, at least in my estimation, to start Mason Rudolph, that's a good reason why. I don't think it's a coincidence that you had your best offensive output of the season as far as your 2 best outputs as far as yards and points both came against Cincinnati, but your 2 best yardage performances came against Cincinnati. Granted, that's not a really good Cincinnati defense. Perhaps statistically, the only one worse in the league might be Washington. But at the same time, we've seen this team struggle with low-rated defenses because the quarterbacks could not do the basic things that were needed to be done. And if that's the case, and Mason Rudolph's doing it, you gotta dance with the date that brought you here, so to speak. Stephen Dormont, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, Josh.
Hey.
First off, I want to say Merry Christmas to me and mine, to you and yours.
Merry Christmas, Steve. Appreciate you.
Also, so I called in last week about my predictions for how the rest of the year would go. I said they're going to show up in Cincinnati, ball out, right? And then Seattle get blown out by Geno Smith, who I guess he's out now. So
Well, he played today against Tennessee, so.
Did he do all right? But,
Yeah, they came back and won 2017. I did the highlights about 20 minutes ago.
Well, turn it on a little late. My bad. But
That's
then,
cool. No worries. It's fine.
So we'll see. We'll see next week, I guess. I mean, I bet if Mason starts, then might be a replay of yesterday, and then Baltimore. I mean, so I don't know. So what do you think? How the rest of the year will go? I mean, I got 1 out of 3 right. What do you think?
Well, 1 out of 3 is a good start. Here's what I think about next week as far as next week and the week against Baltimore. I'll say this again. If you want to see the Steelers have their best shot, you want to see Baltimore beat Miami next week. Because if Baltimore beats Miami next week, they wrap up home field advantage in the playoffs. And they're probably going to sit everybody in that last game against the Steelers in Baltimore. So that helps the Steelers' chances tremendously. As far as next week, I feel 2 ways about this. One, I'm worried about the defense's ability to stop the run if Landon Roberts can't play. I think that's a big problem. Number 2, I don't know if I expect a mirror image of yesterday next week. Here's why. There's a handful of teams that have lost their starting quarterbacks throughout the season. They've brought their backup quarterbacks in, and their backup quarterback has a quick, brief period of success, and then things start to fall off a cliff. Started with Cincinnati. Well, it didn't start with Cincinnati, but here's an example of Cincinnati. Jake Browning had 3 really good games, but the 2 games he lost, both of them were against the Steelers. But he started to hit that wave, and then he came down, and that wave came crashing down in the trough. Other quarterbacks this has happened with, guys like Nick Mullins in Minnesota. This came after Josh Dobbs had that hot hand in Minnesota. Then he was replaced by Nick Mullins. And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson in Cleveland, and they eventually went to Joe Flacco. Granted, some of that was injury concerns, but Joe Flacco also. But here's where Joe Flacco's different. Joe Flacco's not a backup. He was a career starter. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. He's not your average backup quarterback. So I set Cleveland to the side as far as other quarterbacks being able to step in and do what they do. However, across the board, think about the Jets and the success that they had early with one quarterback, and then it fell off. And then they tried to go to Zach Wilson. They had one really good game with him, and the other experiences were bad. The thing with backup quarterbacks is, remember Clint Hurdle used to talk about this with baseball players? You know, some players would punch, and then the league would counterpunch. With quarterbacks, especially backup quarterbacks, the league is going to counterpunch because they're going to have a week worth of tape on you. They're going to start paying attention to what you do instead of what the other guy's prone to do because now they see you coming. It's one thing when they don't expect you to play or they don't know what you're going to do. But now they know what your tendencies are. Now they know what you're good at. Now they know who you like to throw to. Now they know what side of the field you're comfortable with or maybe what you read first. And now they can see you coming, so the anticipation might be a little bit different. Do I think that means it's a guaranteed loss against Seattle? No. But Seattle will be more prepared to face Mason Rudolph and maybe see what he's capable of doing. Maybe they'll be more keen to try to play towards that deep ball and try to take that deep pass away. Maybe that's one thing they try to do. Maybe they try to emphasize stopping the run game and force Mason Rudolph to become one-dimensional. Don't really know what they're planning in Seattle. We'll see what Pete Carroll cooks up. But as far as what I'm expecting, I don't think it'll be as easy because Seattle now, if they know Mason Rudolph's going to start, they're going to see him coming. Got to take a break. We'll wrap up when we come back. Stick around. Break down some of those games that happened today in the NFL. Buccaneers and Jaguars, and Browns, Titans, Falcons, Colts, Seahawks, Titans. Falcons, Colts, Seahawks, Titans, and I said Browns and Titans. It's Browns and Texans. But we'll have highlights for those 4 games because each of those 4 games, in one way or another, help the Steelers' chances of making the playoffs. And then here's another one that we're talking about in progress right now. New England leading Denver 23-15. That's another one that helps the Steelers because the Broncos are a game behind the Steelers. So the Broncos losing would drop them to 2 games behind. That would, I should say, they're half a game behind the Steelers. If they lose this game, they will drop to a game behind. So that's another one that could be helpful if New England holds on the road. But we'll have the highlights of those games. We'll talk about some other things as well during KDKA News at 11. A couple things I want to remind you of. After KDKA News at 11, stick around for the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. Bob Pompiani and our panel, which is Jason Mackey from the Post-Gazette, Andrew Filipponi from 93.7 The Fan, and yours truly as well. We will be talking a lot about the Steelers. We will be talking about the Kenny Pickett versus Mason Rudolph debate, and we'll be talking about also the economics of baseball. How do you handle that if you're Major League Baseball? What do you do to fix what's going on with the game after the signings by the Dodgers of guys like Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto from the Dodgers perspective and from Major League Baseball's perspective? How do you curtail all those things? We'll talk about that coming up later on this evening. Also want to remind everybody that we're going to keep everything rolling as far as our coverage for Steelers as well. Steelers kick off every game day, if you will, at 11:30. Bob Pompiani and our crew in studio get you ready for kickoff for every game. And then after the game, it is the extra point. And, of course, we'll discuss it all on the nightly sports call. So all of that is set up for you going into next week against the Seahawks as well. So plenty to discuss. In the meantime, want to thank everybody again for watching. Thanks for your phone calls. No tweets tonight, but most nights we get tweets, and thank you for those. We appreciate it. As I say often, it's you guys that make this show great. We appreciate you joining us on your Christmas Eve. We know it's a very important time of the year, spending time with your families, but we appreciate you spending time with us and our family here at KDKA. And we will be back for you tomorrow night. I will be right here. Might even have a special treat for you right here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, but we will be here at 10:35 as we always are on KDKA+. For our producer, Jeremiah Miller, for our team here at KDKA, I'm Josh Taylor saying thanks for watching. We will be back here tomorrow, and we're doing it all over again. I'm sure we'll talk more football, and we'll have a couple more games to talk about tomorrow as well, and we'll see how those help out the Steelers. In the meantime, make the switch over to KDKA. We got a whole lot more to talk about and a lot more coverage of the Steelers and their opportunity to enter the playoffs in the AFC. In the meantime, we will see you later. Thanks for watching.